So, Eric, you've been in the learning and development space specifically for sales professionals for quite some time. And so I've been anxious to hear your take on what works effectively for sales professionals, especially since most of them don't work in a central location. And when they're not out selling, they're not out earning. So it's really important to make the most of their time. So I know you are not a fan of so-called fire hose training. Can you share with us what you consider to be an effective approach for learning for sales professionals?
Yeah, sure. I've always believed that salespeople should always be learning. So to me, the proper approach to sales education is that it's continuous, and whether that is formal training, events and webinars, whether that is your manager coaching you, or whether that is developing your skill set, but ultimately the biggest piece of the equation, and what led us to start Count Five, was I saw a lot of companies that were pretty good at training, whether it was on skills or new products or new processes, whatever, but none of them had a real reinforcement strategy. So even if the training was good and everyone was very euphoric about it, the next hour you're back on the job, you're getting pulled in 500 different directions. And anyone that comes from the training world will tell you that training is not effective until someone actually applies what they've learned.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge is that people forget most of it before they even get a chance to apply it. And when that moment of truth arrives, either they don't remember to apply it, or they're not confident about how well they can. And so that's kind of what led to this reinforcement concept that we introduced.
Okay, so can you dive more into what do you mean by reinforcement training?
I think whenever you're trying to drive change in someone's behavior, you're really trying to change what they say, do, or not. Either you want them to say something different, say something more effectively, say something more confidently, but it's really about making information, whether it's applying new product knowledge or a new skill. It's not remembering to apply it when you're actually customer facing on a sales call. I had an old boss that talked about, just gave a good analogy of what we do. He's an old baseball coach, and he said, well, everyone on a baseball team probably has some skills they've already developed. And when you get someone up to the plate during practice, you throw some pitches at them and see how they're swinging. And there might be things they can improve on. So you overload them with so much instruction that their performance actually probably goes down once they start applying it. But that's when you put them into the batting cages and build up some muscle memory. And but once you get to the game and they're sitting in the deck circle, you don't re-deliver all that instruction. You deliver something that helps them recall all that instruction,
Okay.
whether it's keep your chin up, or, and something to reactivate that muscle memory. And in a way, that's the type of reinforcement is enough information getting fed to someone that it's enough to bring back a lot of other information, and they remember to actually apply it at that moment of truth.
Okay, so can you dig into an example of what a trigger may be that's corollary to your story for sales professionals?
um, well, I, I'll give you one story. We had a customer, Fortune 500 company, and they sold financial and insurance instruments to large banks, and so this was things like title insurance and appraisal products, credit products, and the things that banks bundle into a loan and call closing costs. They buy those from a third party, and this is a company that sold it, and this company had gone through a lot of merger and acquisition and was almost acting like a glorified holding company, even though that wasn't their intention. And finally, the board said, "Okay, time time to consolidate and scale and benefit from these acquisitions. So they ended up consolidating their 5 separate business units that were all calling on the same banks. And now instead of me selling credit products to banks, I had to sell an entire portfolio of products. And uh, when when we engaged with that customer, there's so much change. I wanted to be very specific about what the important changes were. And when I sat down with the VP of sales and said, what's the most important thing that we could change in 3 months that would make you happiest? And he said, if we turned everybody into title insurance salespeople, even though there's 5 other products, if we turned everyone into good title, because that's by 10x more profitable.
Right.
So we went through a process of saying, okay, what makes a good title salesperson? There was the basics of product knowledge, understanding products, understanding competitors, understanding the buyer personas, understanding their various motivations, and once we created this kind of chart, we actually had a structure for our reinforcement program, and one of their top performing reps, 45 days of process, who came from the credit sales in the business, closed a $5 million title deal with one of her existing accounts. And I was very cocky about that. I walked into the VP of sales office. I go, hey, did you see what Lisa did? And he goes, oh, you think it had something to do with you? And I go, well, it might. And he goes, let's call her up. And he put her on speakerphone, and I'm panicking, just wondering what she's going to say. And when she got on the phone, he goes, hey, I've got the Q guy in here, and he thinks he had something to do with your big sale. What do you say? He goes, well, Q didn't close that deal. I did. I'm one of your top performers. I'm in President's Club every year. I closed the deal. And I'm like, okay. She goes, I'll tell you what Q did, though, is she went through 3 days of drink from the fire hose, status quo type training, death by PowerPoint. They take a couple of learning classes on their LMS, and then all of a sudden they're expected to check the box. They're expected to sell this, and she made a conscious decision that she wasn't going to talk about any of the stuff with her valuable customers because she didn't have confidence in her ability to represent it. She lacked confidence in the company's ability to execute if she did. And she goes, the only thing that Q did, that these little reinforcement events every week, is it got me to a point of confidence that I actually felt like reaching out to a big customer and asking them what they did about their title. And she goes, and that's what the fact that if they asked me a question, I could dive down at least to the next level of response was enough to get me to pick up the phone. And that was the key is there was enough triggers in that process. It's not a single trigger. I mean, but it's enough trigger that it's going to make a difference. I had a call center that was doing service to sales, and they had a big initiative to sell more high-speed internet, and what we discovered is they understood all the lines, all the things to say, everything to say about the product, all the objections. They understood all the stuff, but they were just forgetting to bring it up. And what we found out is when the reinforcement triggers happened, that there was an immediate increase in high-speed internet sales, which was interesting. And once someone has success with something, you don't have to worry about reinforcing it all that much anymore because that's enough positive reinforcement in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so key because I would imagine part of what's happening is once somebody's sat through fire hose training, they've just crammed everything into their short-term memory, which of course isn't going to last. But through a series of drip reinforcements like you're describing, it's eventually in your long-term memory. And so a rep at some point says, I already know this. You just sent this to me, and I know I already know this. So there's no reason why I can't do it. Whereas they may not have the confidence right after the fire hose training. It's really brilliant.
Right. Yeah. And there's actually we came up with the concept behind it before we found the science that actually substantiated it. And there's a lot of proven brain science around it.
Right.
There's a concept called spaced learning, or called interval reinforcement, where you just have very short deliveries of reinforcement, but you have it at a frequency that's spaced over time, is far more effective in driving it out of short-term memory and putting it into long-term memory, than than the fire hose concept.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
I mean, anyone who went to college and crammed the night before a test and got an A. I mean, I did that at Georgia Tech, some classes, and I would get an A on the test, and then 2 days later, I didn't remember anything about it. Versus the class that you really liked, that you studied 10 minutes a day, you hardly had to study for those tests because you knew the material. So I mean, that's kind of the difference.
Yeah, exactly. So for your typical sales rep, how do they employ this concept for themselves?
Well, it's let differentiate what we're not, because there's portals and knowledge bases and sales enablement tools out there, that have the proper fit, I think, and what that proper fit is what I would call just in time, just for me.
Okay.
Where I, as an individual, am motivated to find out more about this or find out more about that, and I pull it down from my phone or PC. That that sort of thing's not what we do.
Right.
We're a sales rep doesn't really employ technology. It gets employed through a centralized strategy.
Right.
So what companies will do is, based on whatever their current initiative is, they will make sure that they have sustainable reinforcement for that, and they will aim it at the masses. And the the difference in impact, if you're addressing the masses on something, and typical, just to give you an idea, I mean, we can do a lot of different things with our technology, but a typical day in the life of a sales rep getting reinforcement is they're going to get a notification on their PC or smartphone, 1 week, and they click on it, and it launches the browser, and it's going to ask them 3 or 4 questions about stuff they should already know. And it might be knowledge-oriented questions, or they might be scenario or situations. In this situation, what should you say or do next, or what should you be thinking about, or what should your priorities be? And there's nothing rocket science to answering a few questions. The sales reps enjoy it because it challenges them, and at the same time, it doesn't take them out of pocket for an hour. So they're happy. It takes them 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes, maybe a week to do. And if they answer correctly, great. We let it, hip hip hooray, let them move on with their day. And if they answered incorrectly, Q remediates in real time. So it gives them feedback and context so they can learn more about what it is they didn't understand. And then Q remembers what they didn't understand and makes a point of individualizing reinforcement and giving them repeated views of the stuff they don't understand. And we do that on a mass scale. So, you figure 3 weeks into a 500 rep reinforcement program, by week 3, everyone's getting individual reinforcement based on their gaps.
Okay. Really smart. So, what do you do to continue to keep yourself on top of your game?
Ah, believe it or not, we drink our own Kool-Aid a little bit. I when I read a lot of blogs. I mean, that's my primary source of keeping my sales skills sharp, is reading blogs. Of course, I read Sales Mastery magazine religiously, so that's really all. No, but I mean, it's a source, and when I'm always after the gold nuggets. Even when I was a sales rep and I would attend a 3-day training event, I went in with a decent attitude, saying, okay, I'm going to sit through 3 days, and there's going to be about 1 hour's worth of nuggets that I'm going to take, and once I find those nuggets, I actually put them into queue as tips and questions, and basically, every week I'm getting just a little bit of a feed on it to keep me honest.
Really smart. Well, do you have any last advice that you'd give to sales professionals to make sure that they're always staying really on top of their game?
Well, I you don't individually you don't need a technology like you to stay on top of your game. What really gave me the idea behind Q was what I did when I shifted industries, and it was in the same industry for 12 years, and then all of a sudden I'm selling enterprise software to verticals I've never even sold to, um, and I created 100 flashcards, and it was industry question. It was 100 questions, and I interviewed so many people in my company, but it was questions about competitors, questions about the technologies that my clients will be using, questions about the buyers, and every day I reviewed 5 or 10 of them. Once I mastered them, I put them aside, and I just kept looking at the stuff I didn't. And within, I went from the rookie newbie to to the number one sales rep at that company. Even the CEO said that I knew more about the product and the market than the founders did, and it was just
Wow.
a result of that process. I mean, it's I think it's a pretty straightforward approach to make you a subject matter expert, not only from a skill standpoint, but the domains that you're selling to.
Really smart. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Sales Mastery is your resource to make it easy to accelerate your sales learning. Make sure to connect. Find out about new interviews first by subscribing to our YouTube channel right here. And get more resources to help you master selling by clicking here. I wish you the best of success.